Hi, my name is Claudia Vargas, and this is my journey. Growing up, my life was full of limitations. I carried cultural expectations and family responsibilities that weighed heavy on my heart. From a young age, I was tasked with learning how to take care of the home so that I could learn how to become a woman. Underneath the pressure of expectations hid layers of dysfunction, silence, and heavy burdens of things that I didn't ask for. I carried deep scars of emotional and physical abuse. I also wasn't allowed to express myself freely. I wasn't allowed to cut my hair because my worth was in the length of my hair. I wasn't allowed to play sports because only boys could play sports. I wasn't allowed to draw because nothing would come of me drawing. I often wondered if I would ever be enough, if things would ever change, and if I would ever meet someone that would love me for me. As a teenager, family expectations remained the same. They were relentless and strict. I was taught to be the good girl, to avoid getting in trouble, and to always help others before taking care of myself. I wasn't allowed to ask for the things I needed or wanted, and my voice was often silenced. The outside world wasn't much easier. I struggled to have a sense of self-worth. People's judgment of myself and even my own judgment isolated me. Music became my refuge, and in band, I found a sense of belonging and freedom that I couldn't find anywhere else. Band became more than an outlet for me. It became a place where I embraced my natural leadership abilities. I love guiding others, mentoring my peers, and working together as a team. For the first time, I felt like I had a purpose, and for a while, that was enough. After high school, I wasn't exactly sure what path to take. My options seemed minimal. I became the first one in my family to attend college, and it felt like an honor and a burden to live up to those expectations. Shortly before I finished college, I met my husband. We didn't overthink our connection, we simply enjoyed each other's company. We didn't know where things would go, but we simply were willing to go on an adventure together. Life threw more challenges in my direction, and life didn't turn out the way that I imagined. I married into a family that brought with them new expectations that weren't mine. I didn't know how to set boundaries, so I kept allowing others to put me into roles that didn't feel right. I thought that if I did everything, I would be enough, but I lost myself in the process. I allowed myself to be pushed further and further into the background. Before having my daughter, I experienced several miscarriages, and rather than receiving support, I was met with judgment. I allowed people in my life to mistreat me, and I told myself that I would be the better person by not making it a big deal. But all I did was dismiss my own feelings and push myself further into the background. When my daughter was born, I struggled with postpartum depression, but no one noticed, not even me. On the outside, I seemed fine, but on the inside, I was overwhelmed and lost. Rather than expressing my pain, I kept pushing myself into the background. I tried to meet everyone else's expectations by putting on a mask of strength, but the more I hid my pain, the further I drifted from who I was. Years later, when I became pregnant with my son, I thought things would be different. I remember how much I struggled with my daughter, and I didn't want to fall into the same pattern. I did all the right things. I went to therapy, took medication, and communicated with my loved ones. But despite all my preparation, I still found myself struggling. No matter how much I prepared, the feelings of anxiety and sadness were waiting to burst into my life. Due to unique circumstances, I started my new job and career path when my son was only 6 weeks old. I was still breastfeeding, taking medication that left me feeling exhausted, trying to balance the demands of a household, marriage, and kids. And despite all my efforts, I found myself pretending that everything was okay when deep down inside, I was drowning. Shortly after my son turned 1, I found myself at the lowest point of my life. Everything I thought I knew and everything I had built was falling apart. I felt lost, heartbroken, and overwhelmed by fear. I wondered how things had spiraled out of control. I was faced with an internal battle. The decision I had to make would affect my entire family. I felt the pressure to hold it all together, but I was falling apart. And in the middle of the chaos, I realized that if I didn't choose myself, I wouldn't be mentally or emotionally available for myself or for my children. I couldn't push myself to the background anymore. I needed to be present for myself, to honor my own worth and reclaim the person I had lost along the way. I had to make the most important decision, the hardest, to take ownership of my own life. That decision marked a significant turning point in my life. I have always supported others without giving myself the same time and energy, and I decided that it was now the time for me to fully invest in myself and make myself a priority. Healing is work, but it is much needed work. I learned to trust myself again, the voice inside of me that I had been quieting for too long. With time, I began to give myself grace. I learned to love myself, not just for who I was becoming, but for who I had been and for the journey itself. Each time I stood up for myself, I reclaimed a part of me that had been lost. And with that, I gained that freedom to explore and grow in ways I never thought possible. I fell in love with the person I was, authentically and fully. As I set boundaries and reclaimed pieces of who I was, my relationships changed too. The unhealthy ones faced friction because I wasn't willing to compromise my well-being, but by standing in my truth, I attracted deeper, more authentic connections that flourish. The more I embraced who I was, the more I could see how my healing had rippled effect, inspiring, uplifting others in ways I never expected. I realized that healing wasn't about erasing my past. It was about transforming it. It was about taking my pain and turning it into love. It was about reclaiming the pieces of myself that I had lost along my journey and learning to love all parts of those pieces. Now I know my worth is not defined by anyone else's opinion. Each day, I get closer to the person I am meant to be, and the glimmer in my eyes has returned. This isn't just my story, it's a story for anyone who has ever felt small, invisible, or lost. It's a story for anyone who feels like their past is holding them back. You're not your past, you're not your pain. You can decide to be the person to overcome it and experience joy in your life again. You don't need permission from anyone but yourself to step into your own power. You have the ability to reclaim your life and transform your pain into love. What's one small step you can take today to honor yourself?